So you just bought a really cheap bike and you think you got this great deal. Well, how much is it going to cost to get it back on the road? What are going to be some of the costs associated with this thing? In this video, I'm going to talk all about that, so stick around. Alright guys, welcome back. So let's say you just bought yourself a super sweet, not so much, CB750 for $100. Sounds like a good deal, you say? Well, it sure seems that way. But there are a lot of things that you have to consider when picking up a project bike. And in this video, I really want to focus on how to create a budget and try to anticipate the costs that are going to be associated with getting this thing up on the road. So let's get started. Alright guys, so one of the first things I want to talk about when determining the budget and of course the project that you're going to undertake here, what direction do you want to go with it? What are your expectations? Are you wanting to do a full concourse restoration of a bike, or are you just wanting to get something running and have something to cruise around on for next season, which is the case for me? I just want to get this thing up and running, have a decent mechanically sound bike, just to have a nice vintage cruiser for next season. And that's all all this thing has to do. So it doesn't have to be super nice. I don't have to have the nicest components on here and everything be completely corrosion free and whatnot. It just has to run and ride and be reliable for me. Now, if you're doing, let's say, a concourse restoration, obviously you're going to want to start out with something in better condition than this, because you're going to dump a ton of labor into it, and that labor is money. Now let's say you're doing like a cafe racer build or something like that. It's doing like a little bit, just doing a few mods. Something like this can definitely work. But what is your skill level, okay? For me, obviously I do this for a living, so my skill level is going to be different than everybody else's. We're all on a different plane here. But for me, I bought this bike because I know that I can do what it takes to get it running. And at $100, it's really not much of a risk for me. But for somebody who's not as familiar with working on engines or bringing anything back from the dead, this is going to be a huge undertaking for you. And you've got to consider that stuff because, in my experience, I've bought a lot of bikes that you see on Marketplace, you see on Craigslist, was going to cafe but lost interest, or was going to do this but lost interest. Most of the time, it means that people took it apart and they don't know where the bolts go and they give up on the project, or they just get themselves overwhelmed. So you need to really consider these things, consider your skill level, consider what you want to do with the bike before you get started. Now we're going to use this bike as the example here, and we're going to base this off of what I intend to do with the bike, which is, like I said, I just want to have a nice cruiser for next season, okay? So we got to come up with an idea of how much it's going to cost. Now, obviously there's no title with this thing, so that is going to be the most important aspect, along with the engine being seized up. So I've got some Marvel's Mystery Oil right here, and I'm going to work on getting this engine unseized over the coming weeks. But I'm also going to be working on getting a title. Now, there's going to be a lot of costs associated with all this stuff. You guys have ever registered a vehicle, you're going to have there might be a record search fee, okay? I'm writing this down because I need to write it down anyway. You might have a record search fee, title app, okay? And then let's say for me, I'm going to do the Vermont Title route for this thing. Link above to the video I made explaining that process and what it is in detail. So title app, you're going to have, of course, your taxes and your transfer fees. Finally, your registration. Registration, you're going to put plates on it, So plates. Before you do plates, you got to have insurance on it. So let's bundle that all within 1 year. Let's say for me, I can insure this bike liability only, really basic, for probably about $80 a year. and then the rest of the record search and title to get everything legal with inspections and whatnot, I'm going to anticipate probably $400 total. So we're going to write 400 right off the bat. So already we're into this thing for about $500, and we haven't even touched it. Okay, all I've done is push it out of the van and push it in here. We're already into it for 500. So 5 times our original investment already. And there's going to be a lot of nickel and dime things that just continue to add up. Okay. All right, so what are going to be some other things that we're going to have to consider to get this thing back on the road? Okay, right off the bat, let's just start writing down some parts. Tires, okay? We've got to have tires. We're going to put tubes with that. All right. We're going to need an air filter, spark plugs, carb cleaning. We're going to have fork seals. And then on these bikes, the master cylinders typically kind of seize up, so you're going to want some master cylinder rebuild, brake caliper rebuild. We're going to obviously have to put new fresh fluids in it, so we got oil, filter. Probably replace all the fuses. It's not that many of them. And then from here, you're going to, you got to consider maybe some upgrades. So this thing still has the original rectifier and regulator type setup on it, but I would like to convert it to a modern, all-enclosed single unit regulator rectifier. And those you can get a nice decent one, probably about $120 or so. I prefer Ricks. I try to use them wherever possible. There's going to be a lot of other things associated with this, but sometimes you don't know what it's going to need until you get further into it. So whether it be bulbs or if it's going to need different gaskets and things that are leaking, you don't know. We gotta kind of anticipate that as we go. Some superficial stuff that's not really associated with it running. I do want to put some side covers back on this thing, but since it's not going to be like a restoration bike, there's no sense in buying an OEM Honda part. So we're going to go aftermarket, try to put on just some generic reproduction type molds and side covers on that. The seat doesn't look that comfortable. So I'm going to go, I know there's a lot of different aftermarket options for like just a regular seat cover. So no sense in trying to save this one. We'll just recover it with something that looks factory, and that'll be good. So after the seat, obviously, we are going to need probably some grips. We need those definitely. The handlebars, I've already got a set of handlebars that I can at least use for mock-up just from a buddy. And we're trying to keep this thing budget. Probably going to put a front fender on this thing, maybe some different mirrors. We'll modify it a little bit. But there's going to be the non-essential parts, and there's going to be the essential parts included in all this budget. So kind of looking at all of these costs here, let me kind of break this down how quickly it adds up. It's this whole nickel and dime thing. So tires and tubes, I estimate $300. Air filter, I think you can get them for about $40. Spark plugs, 20. Carb cleaning, 80. And I have 80, which is kind of a low number because I don't typically buy brass. I just clean the brass and I just replace gaskets, and that's typically just what I do. Fork seals, $50, and then you got to think about fork oil. Master cylinder rebuild, probably about 40. Brake caliper rebuild, about 20. Oil and filter, $40. Fuses, I got them on the shelf. Regulator rectifier is our only upgrade. I put that as about 120. And then as far as the seat cover is concerned, I think I've seen these for about $100 or so. So I put 100. That should be close enough for this purpose. Grips, again, I got them for, I've got plenty on the shelf, so free for me, but on here I put 20 to kind of give you guys a number. And all in, we're talking like $1,300 or more, and that's including the taxes and registration fees and stuff like that. Now, there's going to be more costs associated with this. One, an absolute must is going to be a service manual. Get one of these for every bike that you work on. Crucial, valuable information that's going to keep you from having to search the internet for a lot of different questions. It's going to have all of the information you need in here, readily available. They're like $30 to $40 and worth every penny and then some. So definitely get one for whatever bike you're working on. Beyond that, within that kind of miscellaneous category here, I put about $400 because you got to think it's going to cost shop supplies. It's going to cost shop towels, brake clean. It's going to cost electricity to run your compressor and all kinds of different things that you can't really put an exact dollar on, and that's really difficult to kind of estimate. And there might, of course, there's going to be other parts on here, you know, who knows, probably needs clutch cables and a throttle cable and stuff like that, but I don't have them on my list, so we don't know until we kind of get to that point without tearing this thing down. So always add like a cushion in there, and that'll keep you from going over budget really quick, and it really helps, you know, to mentally prepare for the number being higher than you originally anticipated. So all in, you know, adding that $400, we're over $1,700, and that's a lot of money for a $100 CB750. So of course, something like this is absolutely not for everybody, and I'm not trying to put this video out to scare anybody away, but to rather be realistic with the information that, you know, that I see really what it takes to get these things back on the road. Now, like as I said, of course this isn't going to make sense for everybody, but for me, something like this allows me to do multiple things. It kind of gives me a personal project to work on that I can hopefully in turn sell and at least break even on when I'm done with it. I get to make content for you guys to hopefully get some information out there on whether it be title process, unsticking an engine, rebuilding the carburetors, any of the various things on this bike. I can film and hopefully create a video for you guys that's informative and, you know, mildly entertaining, I guess. And that's going to be another benefit for me that's unique to me. I know not everybody is doing this, but this is something that I have vowed to do, and I want to continue doing. So that makes sense. So another huge factor is obviously the skill set here. I mentioned everybody's working from a different level here, and me, I've just focused on old classic bikes, and I'm very familiar with old Hondas specifically. So something like this makes more sense. Now if it was like an old Ironhead Sportster, or if it was like some Ducati or something like that, not really the project for me because I'm not as well versed in them. And that project would have more unknowns for me, whereas this one, I kind of know what they do, and I know what goes wrong with them, and I'm more familiar, so there's less risk involved. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of a way to think through the project and a way to think about your budget and try to write everything down and get an idea of how much everything's going to cost you to get your project back on the road. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. I hope it was not as scary as I think I painted it to be, but the whole idea here was to let you guys kind of understand how, you know, nickels and dimes can add up into something larger, and your project can get really out of hand really quick, and you want to try to avoid that by the best budgeting practices that you can and build in that extra cushion and just be prepared. You know, these things, you know, you're not going to get it right every time, but at least having an idea, having a good plan going forward will help save you some headache and hopefully financial strain in the future. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up here. If this is the first time seeing one of my videos, I definitely hope you take a cruise back through the channel. I got a lot of different variety on here, whether it be working on old bikes, bringing them back to life, going on adventure rides, riding the mini bike in the corner, doesn't matter. I got a lot of stuff on here. Give me a follow on social media. It's just Brickhouse Builds across the board. And definitely subscribe if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. It helps me get content out to you guys. So anyway, again, I'm going to wrap it up. I really appreciate you guys watching, and hope to see you in the next video.